So in December, the Game Awards took place, which I know a lot of you will know about because it's been a big topic in the community lately. And I know a lot of people aren't happy about the Game of the Year because they really wanted their DLC to win, which is I'm talking about Shadow of the Erdtree. But in the end, that doesn't matter because Elden Ring nightreign was announced, which is a new FromSoft title, which looks to be a roguelike, which is usually they make Souls-likes, but they've made well, their most popular games are Souls-likes, but they've definitely made games of different genres before, which is that's fine. It can be a roguelike, and it has four classes, which I think is quite different. For obviously they're aiming for trying to, I guess, cater towards the Elden Ring community. So having classes rather than just being able to make your own character is definitely an interesting decision. But the classes do make sense having four different play styles, but not being able to make your character is a little bit weird. But again, that's fine. It looks like there's a Fortnite-esque storm mechanic to like shrink the map as the round goes on, I suppose. And from what I remember, it looks like a wave fighting game. And there's a boss at the end apparently. And this game obviously isn't my cup of tea, but I'm probably not going to play it unless it's free, I suppose. But if you like that, then play that, I guess. But what my question is why does it use the Elden Ring name when it could very obviously be its own standalone title and has nothing to do with Elden Ring? I suppose it uses the same map, but other than that, it's got absolutely nothing to do with Elden Ring. And I think that's a little bit weird from them, but what I think it is money. Because the Elden Ring franchise is a big name at the minute. So I suppose what they're trying to do is they're trying something new, but I don't know why they don't have confidence because they are a widely known company now. But I guess they don't have the confidence to sell their games, so they're using the Elden Ring name to try and like boost it, I guess. Which I think I don't really agree with that, but it's their game. They can do what they want at the end of the day. But I think just having it called nightreign would be so much better than just trying to capitalize off of Elden Ring, which I think they've done enough of, to be honest. And I know people do like to glaze Elden Ring, which I don't like that word at all, but that's actually something I hadn't seen. And they also like to glaze FromSoft, which is again something I haven't seen since around the time the Shadow of the Erdtree released. Because I remember, I'm pretty sure Elden Ring was released in 2022, but I could be wrong. I remember getting it around that time. It might have been a year before, or maybe it was. I know it definitely wasn't 2023, but it was around that time. I remember I got it uh, day one, and I did see some things about it before. I remember they had the whole. I think it was a beta test, and it was announced, I think 2019, so fans had been waiting that long. And I remember there was actually a lot of hype for it from 2019 all the way to 2022, and especially around the time of the beta test. But when it came out, because again, I know people like to talk about how Elden Ring is like the best game on the planet or whatever, but it really isn't as good as people say compared to the previous titles that they've released. And this, obviously, this is just opinion, but I think this because the main selling point of the whole of Elden Ring was the open world, and the open world was absolutely beautiful. And there's some pretty cool like things you can see in Elden Ring. You can see like with the big tree and everything, and you can see pretty far into the distance at the rest of the map. And they're all places that you can go throughout the game, which I think is pretty cool. But again, this main selling point was the open world, and the open world was this is like uh, honestly every open world game I played apart from like Cyberpunk or I guess Red Dead, they've been completely lackluster, and this goes for Elden Ring as well. Like the open world just wasn't that good. And on top of that, players were encouraged to explore this world in order to, because I'm pretty sure they scaled the boss up to like kind of fit into the open world. So it encouraged players to explore, to level up and find items and weapons to beat these bosses. So the bosses were slightly harder, I guess. But the problem was the world was empty. And there just wasn't anything going on. Obviously, it looked nice because that's like FromSoft's whole thing with their previous games. The map design is just like amazing. But the world was so big and so empty, and a lot of the assets and bosses were just reused to fill it up. And the game was fun still. Like the open world really didn't matter to me because it was just a game I wanted to play and it was fun. And this only went for the first playthrough because I played the game and then I finished it and I thought, I want to play the game again. So I started again and then I just thought, this is just the same game again. Like, it has no replayability, which their previous games did. But the thing is, the game is so long compared to the other games. When I start it, I just think I don't even have the motivation to do this. And on top of that, it's not, even though the map is beautiful, I've seen it all before. And just walking through this empty world it just isn't fun. So I can't really see myself ever playing the game again. But for the first playthrough, it was a really good game. Up to about the end of the game, I don't really know why the difficulty spike suddenly jumped so high, but obviously you get through that, and it's still a good game at the end. And I know there was a lot of complaints about the end of the game back then, which wouldn't fly today, but. And I have like a lot of profiles on Elden Ring where I've just made a new character and I've started playing. I got to like maybe the first castle area and then I just got bored and stopped. And then I'd come back a few months later and I'd make a new character because at that point I haven't played the game in so long. I may as well just make a new character so I can start all over. And then it gets to the same point and I just think I can't do this anymore because it still feels like no matter how long it's been, obviously it's been like it might be coming up on 3 years now since Elden Ring came out, and I still remember like the entire thing. So I just can't do that again. And obviously, this is not a jab at FromSoft because obviously it's like open world games are hard to make. Like you need it to be immersive and everything for it to work. But I think they just weren't ready for something this big because the game would have worked so well if it was just linear, like their previous titles had been. Because I like the Elden Ring as like a modern Dark Souls, or I guess not really Bloodborne and Sekiro because they're kind of Sekiro's already pretty mod, and Bloodborne's like a completely different game. But I guess Dark Souls. It's like a modern Dark Souls. It's got nice graphics. The character creator was pretty good. It was a big leap from their old games, so I like that. The armor was pretty nice, and I liked they added the jumping mechanic. The game just felt a lot smoother, basically. So that would have been good as just a linear title. So yeah, Elden Ring, it was a good game, but the open world just wasn't it for me. And then I think this pretty sure was 2024. So I guess about 2 years later, there was the DLC, which was actually honestly for me a huge letdown and a waste of money. Because when remembering the first time I played Elden Ring, the hype grew like just before the release. Like I really wanted to play this game, the same as when I heard about the DLC coming out in like a week. I really wanted to play this, and I thought I was gonna be able to relive my memories from when I first played Elden Ring. And then I bought it day one for I think it was about like £40, which is about the same in dollars, obviously. And just playing it, I just thought it just wasn't it, to be honest. Like to me, the bosses were just like reskinned bosses from the base game. I thought I'll just play it because I guess it will be fun. when I finish it, and the game wasn't fun, but when I got to the end, I think I can say I finished it. And I know a lot of people, because there's this weird new mindset that FromSoft can't ever make a mistake, which didn't used to be a thing, but it is now. If you didn't like the DLC, you didn't like it because you weren't good at the game. So I thought, if I finish the game, like, there's no point that I've quit the game because I just couldn't do it. I've played through the game and I still don't think that it was fun. So I thought I'll play through it just to say that I've done it. But this is where I found out that the final boss was literally just Radahn again. And I just thought, and I got to the point where you unlock I guess the shadow of the Erdtree, which is where the final boss is. And this was even after finding out what the final boss is and not really wanting to get there. And I just I couldn't bring myself to go and fight the final boss. Because finding all these fragments or whatever they were was just so boring, because like Elden Ring, the DLC basically just took everything that the old players complained about in 2022 about the base Elden Ring and just like isolated them all into a DLC that cost, like, I don't remember how much Elden Ring cost, but I'm imagining the DLC was like double the price, because I remember there being this whole thing about how expensive it was and how it must be the best thing ever when it comes out, when they revealed the price, I guess. But I don't know why they did that. But the world was somehow more empty and worse traverse. And I think I found all the fragments that you could find. But it was such a boring task. And I hated the grind just so I could fight one boss. And then on top of that, it was, for some reason, the entire point of Elden Ring was that you can play it however you want. But this DLC, for each boss you had to use a specific build, was the common consensus between the Elden Ring community for some reason. So you had to respec for every boss, and I just thought that I didn't even do that. I didn't respec once. I guess, thugged it out. But I just didn't like that idea that you had to play the game the way they wanted you to. When before, that wasn't the case. But this is actually a huge tangent now. But basically, the takeaway from the DLC for me is that it was, like, absolutely terrible. And what was annoying me is people just wouldn't say that. It was like all this, like, thing of, oh, it isn't that bad. You're just playing it wrong. And it's just, like, I think people were scared to admit that it wasn't that good. And I'll say I don't know why, but it becomes pretty obvious if you spend any amount of time with the community why people would be scared of sharing their opinion. But let's just come off of the DLC now, because that was just a huge tangent. Back to, like, the actual topic of the video. My problem with, like, and why I think I'm not liking where FromSoft is going to go, and I have, like, terrible, like, thoughts about what's going to happen, is that FromSoft now, for some reason, cannot make a mistake anymore. And this wasn't a thing in the past, because in the Dark Souls community, people complained all the time about things that they didn't like about the games. And FromSoft would listen to that and improve on it in their following titles. But now, in the new, like, sort of, I guess this is like the Elden Ring era of the FromSoft community, people complain. I don't see people complaining anymore, but people did complain about the DLC, and I think previously they did complain about Elden Ring, but it wasn't as bad back then. With the complaining about the DLC, people would be receiving, like, death threats. Like, it would be on that level from the community, which I think is, like, absolutely insane to think of, like, the leap that has happened between the old FromSoft community and the new one. So I actually have distanced myself from that now, because before it was like, oh, we'll complain about the game, but the game is still really good, and we'll post some funny memes every now and then. Now I cannot even, like, imagine, like, the progression that has been made for us to stoop to this level. Like, just because there was something wrong with with one of the games that they've released. That people should just like suck it up because the game cannot be bad. And I don't even know where this mindset has come from, because they've released bad games in the past, and it was pretty okay to have different opinions, where some people could like this game and some people could not like this game. But now you have to like the game, or you're as good as dead. And I don't like this. Well, obviously because I don't think people should be receiving death threats for disagreeing with somebody. But also, we've seen it with the fact that nightreign is using the Elden Ring name, even though it has nothing to do with Elden Ring, and it's just capitalizing off of the fact that Elden Ring has become like a big name in the gaming industry. Is that because FromSoft can't make a mistake anymore and can't be criticized, they're gonna continue down this path of releasing what I'm gonna call slop. Because obviously the game can be good and people can like the game, but that doesn't mean the game is the best thing that they've ever made. And I think FromSoft is going to keep going down this path, or the spiral of releasing slop, which is what I would call them making games purely for the money, and not because what I believe is why they made the Dark Souls games is because they were passionate, and Miyazaki was passionate about the Dark Souls franchise, which I don't think he's passionate about the Elden Ring franchise, but he's now tasted the fame and the money that Elden Ring has given him, and he just keeps telling us that he has no more plans for anything Elden Ring related. But then he goes back on that and he says, "Oh, but I would be willing to make an Elden Ring movie," which to me that makes absolutely no sense. If like Elden Ring compared to the old games, just Elden Ring did not have a story. So what would that even like follow? And I know people will watch the movie because it's like become generally accepted now that Elden Ring is the best thing on this planet. So I know people are gonna obviously it could be cool because I know Elden Ring looks awesome and I think a movie would look awesome. But making an Elden Ring movie makes absolutely no sense other than for the money. And I think he's gonna continue down this spiral for as long as nobody calls it out. And that I don't see happening. But I would love for people to like call him out on that and say Elden Ring needs to die, and just because I know what he's like. I know he doesn't like staying on one title for long. He hated the idea of him making Dark Souls 2, which is why he gave it off to someone else. Because Dark Souls 1, that was it. That was all he wanted. And then he came back for a Dark Souls 3, which I suppose is unrelated because Dark Souls 3, I think he saw Dark Souls 2, and Dark Souls 3 is supposed to be what he would have made Dark Souls 2. But he didn't want to make this. So the fact that he won't get off of Elden Ring is completely out of character for him. So that's like it's extremely obvious that he likes the money that comes out of it and the attention that is giving him. And I think he's gonna continue that for as long as nobody lets him know that this is happening. And just all I want to say from this video is FromSoft has been heavily praised for releasing games that are noted for completely overshadowing the AAA games that are made by AAA companies today with way higher budgets, and their games are like a tier above that. But all I want to say is, like what's happened with Elden Ring, please don't blindly praise their games, and don't just think, oh, this game is made by FromSoft, it has to be the best game that's ever been made, because it doesn't have to be the best game that's ever been made. In the past, there have been bad games they've released. People liked them, but that doesn't mean it has to be Game of the Year 5 years in a row, even though it didn't even come out in that year. And even when they make they'd like draw a picture of an Elden Ring boss, oh, that's Game of the Year. Like, the DLC can't be Game of the Year, because it's okay, and you don't have to go crazy when it isn't Game of the Year, because it's okay for the game not to be the best game that anybody's ever touched, because it's not. So just don't blindly praise them and call out their mistakes like it used to be, because we need these games to be good, and we can't just let them just release like slop after slop in the future and just blindly praise them. And on the whole death threats thing, and you just don't like this game because you suck, because it's actually embarrassing to even read stuff like that. Because why would you even stoop to that level? Because your game, somebody said, I like Elden Ring, but it's just not as good as people say it is. Don't just go, oh, you should actually just kill yourself and you just suck at the game. Because it's insane to think that you're not allowed to have an opinion that differs from them because this game is the best thing that's ever like been seen. Because it's not. And it's okay for people to not like the game. Because for some people it's just completely not their game. They don't like hard games. And just sometimes people see these flaws. They're completely on board with this game. They've finished the game. They could have finished it multiple times. Like played the game like 10 times at this point, and they still haven't found what you're trying to tell them is that this game is absolutely perfect. Because no matter how many times they play this game, they're gonna find mistakes. Because the game isn't perfect. There's no such thing as perfect. So just we need to stop this, to be honest, is all I'm saying. And we need to make this community less toxic because it didn't used to be this toxic. And I'm seeing it get more and more toxic, and I'm not a big fan of that. So my final point and my final thing that I want to leave with you is let's not lose one of the best game developers that we have. This is the last, other than indie game developers, this is the last like development company that we have that still releases good games. So let's not lose that by not letting them make mistakes. Because it's okay for a company to make mistakes, and we need to talk about that so that they can improve. Because if they don't improve, it goes down. So anyway, that's just my message, and I have nothing else to say about this. I know this was actually an incredibly long video and a bit more of a rant than my videos that will be coming out and my videos that have come out previously. But that's just all I want to say about FromSoft, because I am extremely worried about the future of FromSoft and their games. So, see ya.